When you think of gladiators, what comes to mind? Muscular, lean bodies like Greek statues? What if I told you that Rome's most famous warriors were deliberately fed to be fat, entering the arena with a layer of subcutaneous tissue instead of visible abs? This is not a theory. This is truth read from bones. When archaeologists opened gladiator graves, one of Rome's greatest lies collapsed, because these men in the arena were not shaped for aesthetics, they were shaped for survival. So why were gladiators fat? Did this diet prevent them from dying? And how did Rome deliberately modify bodies to entertain audiences? Now the arena gates are opening. You will see truth, not legend. If you love these hidden history stories, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Do you think gladiators were athletes or Rome's living war machines? Write in the comments.
Close your eyes. Picture a gladiator. What do you see? Probably Russell Crowe, chiseled abs, veins popping, zero body fat, muscles carved like marble. The camera loves this. Audiences expect this. Hollywood sells this. Hollywood lied, because real gladiators looked nothing like that. They were not fitness models, were not bodybuilders, were not aesthetic warriors posing for sculptures. They were fat, deliberately, strategically, lethally. The disconnect between fiction and reality is so extreme that when archaeologists first analyzed gladiator remains, they doubted their own findings. These could not be elite fighters. Too much adipose tissue, too high body fat percentage, too soft. But DNA confirmed it. Bone isotope analysis confirmed it. Burial context confirmed it. These were gladiators, Rome's most celebrated combatants, and they were fat. Modern cinema creates gladiators in gym culture's image: low body fat, high muscle definition, six-pack abs, V-taper physiques, because that is what contemporary audiences associate with strength, with warriors, with champions. Rome thought differently. In ancient understanding, visible muscle definition meant starvation, meant weakness, meant the body was consuming itself. A warrior who looked like a modern fitness model was a warrior near death. Fat meant wealth, meant proper feeding, meant investment, meant value. A gladiator with substantial subcutaneous fat layer was a gladiator worth keeping alive. The Roman aesthetic was not Greek aesthetic. Greeks idealized lean, defined musculature, statues showing every muscle fiber, athletes who looked carved from stone. Romans idealized function, practicality, survival, the body as tool, not art. And for gladiators, that tool needed specific modification. Think about modern combat sports. MMA fighters, boxers, wrestlers. They do not maintain bodybuilder physiques. They carry fat, strategic fat, protective fat, fat that absorbs impact, fat that provides energy reserves during brutal exertion. Gladiators understood this 2,000 years earlier. But Hollywood cannot sell fat warriors. Audiences want heroes who look heroic by modern standards. Studios invest millions in actors' physical transformations, personal trainers, nutritionists, steroids, though no one admits it.
The result is historically inaccurate, but visually appealing. Gladiators who could grace magazine covers. Warriors who look like they stepped from Gold's Gym, not from ancient Rome. This creates fundamental misunderstanding. We think gladiators were ancient bodybuilders. We think combat required aesthetic perfection. We think muscles needed to be visible to be effective. All wrong. Real gladiators were built like modern strongmen, powerful, thick, solid, but not defined, not cut, not lean. They had muscle, enormous amounts of muscle, but that muscle was hidden beneath intentional fat layer. Why? Because fat was armor. Fat was investment protection. Fat was survival tool. The ludus owners, gladiator trainers, and investors were not fools. They understood human physiology better than Hollywood directors. They knew that sending lean, defined fighter into arena was sending him to die. Because swords cut lean muscle easily. Tridents penetrate defined abs without resistance. Visible muscle means thin skin. Thin skin means deep wounds. Deep wounds mean death. Fat changed equation. Fat absorbed cuts. Fat prevented lethal penetration. Fat turned potentially fatal wounds into spectacular but survivable injuries. The audience loved blood, but sponsors needed gladiators alive. This created a perfect incentive structure. Make them bleed without killing them. And fat accomplished exactly that. So the Hollywood image, lean, muscular, defined, is opposite of reality. It is what we want gladiators to have looked like, not what they actually looked like. The truth is stranger, more interesting, more brutal. Because real gladiators were not sculptures, were not aesthetic ideals, were living investments in human combat, bodies deliberately modified to maximize survival while maximizing spectacle. Fat gladiators bled impressively, wounds looked terrible, audiences gasped, but combatants lived to fight again, to generate more revenue, to justify investment. This was business, not art. Not idealism, cold calculation about how to profit from human violence. And that calculation led to conclusion that contradicts every modern instinct. Successful gladiators needed to be fat. But fat alone was not enough. The diet that created this fat was equally specific, equally calculated, equally strange by modern standards. And that diet left evidence in bones, in teeth, in chemical signatures that archaeologists can read like ancient menus. 1993, Ephesus, Turkey. Archaeological team excavating ancient cemetery. Routine work, cataloging bones, recording burial patterns, standard procedure. Then they found section that was different. 67 skeletons, all male, all similar age at death, all bearing identical trauma patterns, healed fractures, weapon marks, distinct bone density. Gladiator cemetery. The discovery was extraordinary, but what came next was revolutionary, because these bones told story that contradicted everything scholars thought they knew about gladiator physiology. Bone analysis revealed shocking truth. These men had unusual chemical signatures, high strontium levels, high calcium deposits, mineral composition that indicated very specific diet. Not the diet of warriors, the diet of something else. Dr. Fabian Kahn's led analysis team, forensic anthropologist, bone chemistry specialist. He approached remains scientifically, no preconceptions, just data. What he found confused him initially. These were clearly fighters. Trauma patterns proved it. Healed skull fractures, arm bones thickened from repeated impact, leg bones showing stress from constant movement and sudden direction changes. Combat athletes, undoubtedly. But their diet resembled peasants more than warriors, more specifically, resembled livestock. The strontium-calcium ratio was key. In ancient world, these minerals came primarily from plants, specifically grains and legumes. Meat contained different isotope signatures. Fish showed distinct markers. Diet could be reconstructed from bone chemistry. Gladiators ate almost no meat, despite being Rome's premier fighters, despite requiring enormous strength, despite needing maximum performance. They ate barley, beans, lentils, some vegetables, and something even stranger, ash. The ash signature was unmistakable. Plant ash, consumed regularly, in sufficient quantities to leave permanent trace in bone structure. Why would elite fighters drink ash? Pompeii provided additional evidence. AD 79, Vesuvius erupted. Buried city, preserved everything, including gladiator barracks. Excavations revealed 18 bodies, quadriporticus of the theaters where gladiators lived and trained. These men were caught trying to escape. Volcanic material preserved them perfectly. Analysis confirmed Ephesus findings. Same dietary signatures, same high plant-based nutrition, same ash consumption, same pattern across different locations, different time periods. This was not isolated incident. This was system, deliberate feeding program, implemented consistently across Roman Empire. But why? Why feed warriors like livestock? Why avoid meat? Why supplement with ash? The answers were in the bones themselves, quite literally. Gladiator bones were extraordinarily dense, heavier than normal human bones, mineral content significantly higher. This density came from calcium and strontium, exactly what a plant-heavy diet provided. Dense bones break less easily, withstand impact better, heal faster when fractured. In combat sport where blunt force trauma was constant, bone density was survival advantage. But density alone did not explain everything. The subcutaneous fat, invisible in bones but detectable through other evidence, required different explanation. Modern nutritional science provides answer. High carbohydrate diet, low in protein, promotes fat storage while still building functional muscle. The gladiators were carb-loading constantly, not for aesthetics, for protective tissue. Barley is extraordinarily carbohydrate-dense. Beans provide some protein, but mostly starch. This combination builds muscle slowly but surely, while ensuring continuous fat deposition. The gladiators were not bulking in modern bodybuilding sense, were not trying to maximize muscle size. They were creating specific body composition, strong functional muscle covered by protective fat layer.
Modern sumo wrestlers follow remarkably similar dietary pattern. High carbohydrate, moderate protein, resulting in very strong athletes covered by substantial fat. Not coincidence, same physiological principles. But sumo wrestlers do not fight with swords, gladiators did, which makes fat as armor hypothesis even more critical. Archaeological evidence from weapons helps here. Gladiator swords, gladius, spatha, were sharp but not razor sharp, not surgical instruments. They were meant to cut, not slice, to penetrate, not glide through tissue. Fat resists penetration, creates drag, slows blade, turns potentially fatal thrust into painful but survivable wound. In arena where death meant lost investment, this was crucial. Sponsors, Laniste, who owned gladiators, calculated return on investment carefully. Training a gladiator cost enormous amounts, years of instruction, equipment, housing, medical care. A gladiator who died in first fight represented total loss. But a gladiator who survived multiple fights, who became crowd favorite, who generated betting revenue and attracted sponsors, that gladiator was gold mine. So the diet was not about making them healthy, it was about making them profitable. Fat layer ensured spectacular wounds without lethal damage. Plant-based diet kept costs low while building necessary physique. Ash supplementation strengthened bones to prevent crippling fractures. Everything calculated, everything intentional, nothing left to chance. The Ephesus cemetery revealed one more crucial detail: average lifespan. Gladiators lived longer than expected. Many reached 30s, some even 40s. Extraordinary for ancient world, especially for a profession involving regular combat. This longevity was not accident, was direct result of dietary strategy. Fat protected them, strong bones supported them, calculated nutrition sustained them. But longevity meant nothing if they could not fight effectively. Could fat, slow warriors actually compete? Could plant eaters match meat eaters in strength? The training revealed how.
and what that training produced was not what anyone expected.
Hordearii, barley men. That is what Romans called gladiators, not as compliment, as insult, mockery, because free Roman citizens ate meat, wheat bread, olive oil, wine, the diet of civilization. Gladiators ate like animals, like livestock being fattened, and Romans noticed. But the mockery missed the point, because this diet was not accident, was not poverty, was not neglect. This was science, brutal, practical, effective science. The typical gladiator meal was simple. Morning, barley porridge, thick, heavy, mixed with beans, sometimes lentils, cooked with water, not milk, no honey, no flavor, just fuel. Midday, more barley, sometimes as flatbread, sometimes as gruel, always supplemented with legumes. Beans provided what barley lacked. Together, they created complete protein profile, not optimal, but functional. Evening, largest meal, more barley, more beans, sometimes vegetables, cabbage, onions, leeks, cheap vegetables, filling vegetables, nothing exotic, nothing expensive. Meat was rare, perhaps once per month, perhaps less. When provided, usually organ meats, liver, kidneys, parts wealthy Romans discarded. Even then, portions were small. Meat was not priority. This diet seems inadequate. How could warriors build strength on grain and beans? Modern sports nutrition emphasizes protein, meat, eggs, dairy, high-protein diets for muscle building. But ancient understanding was different. Romans observed that draft animals, oxen, horses, were incredibly strong on plant-based diets. Heavy labor all day, enormous strength, pure herbivores. If plants could power oxen, plants could power gladiators. The key was volume. Gladiators ate enormous quantities, 3 to 4 pounds of barley daily, equivalent amount of beans, massive caloric intake, far exceeding normal Roman citizen.
This volume accomplished two things. First, provided sufficient calories for brutal training. Second, ensured continuous carbohydrate availability, energy on demand, no metabolic downtime. The fat accumulation was inevitable. Excess carbohydrates convert to fat, always. Body cannot store unlimited carbohydrates, converts surplus to adipose tissue. This was not side effect, this was goal. But the strangest element was ash beverage. After training, gladiators drank mixture of plant ash and water, sometimes vinegar added. This drink had specific purpose. Plant ash is rich in calcium. When plants burn, organic matter disappears, minerals remain, calcium, magnesium, potassium. Drinking ash was drinking concentrated minerals. Why this mattered? Bone density. Constant combat stressed skeletal system. Bones needed repair, needed reinforcement. Calcium was construction material. Ash provided it directly. Modern athletes take calcium supplements, drink fortified beverages. Ancient gladiators drank literal ash, crude but effective. The vinegar served different purpose. Acid helped calcium absorption, made minerals bioavailable. Romans did not understand chemistry, but they understood results. Gladiators who drank ash had stronger bones, healed faster, lasted longer. Some ludi, gladiator schools, had specific ash recipes. Some used oak ash, others preferred beech. Each claimed superiority.
Whether differences mattered is unknown, but ritual mattered, psychology mattered. Drinking ash was identity marker, separated gladiators from normal Romans, reinforced their otherness, their specialness. You are not citizen, you are gladiator. You drink ash, you eat barley, you are different. This psychological dimension was crucial. Gladiators needed to see themselves as separate category, not slaves, not citizens, something between, something unique. Diet reinforced this identity. The cost analysis was also important. Barley was cheap, beans were cheap, ash was free, meat was expensive, wheat was expensive. A lanista feeding 50 gladiators could not afford meat-heavy diet.
The cheap diet that produced effective fighters? That was business model. That was profit. Compare with Roman legion diet. Legionaries received wheat, some meat, wine ration, better quality than gladiator diet. But legionaries were not investment assets, were not entertainment. Different priorities. Gladiators were investments. Return on investment required keeping them alive, fighting effectively, generating revenue. The diet accomplished all three goals while minimizing costs. But did it actually work? Could barley and beans produce strength comparable to meat-eating warriors? Evidence suggests yes. Gladiators were phenomenally strong. Not strongest possible. Olympic athletes on optimized diets would surpass them, but strong enough, more than strong enough. The strength came from training, not just diet, but diet enabled training, provided energy, supported recovery, built tissue. The barley and beans were foundation. Training was structure built on that foundation. Modern vegetarian athletes prove concept. Plant-based diets can support elite performance. Not optimal for every sport, not ideal for every individual, but possible, demonstrably possible. Gladiators proved it 2,000 years earlier, without modern supplements, without nutritional science, without protein powders or amino acid profiles. They ate barley, drank ash, got fat, got strong, survived. The Romans mocked them as Hordearii, barley men, lesser beings. But those barley men generated fortunes, filled amphitheaters, became celebrities, while eating food most Romans considered animal feed. There's a lesson here about assumptions, about nutrition, about what bodies can accomplish with seemingly inadequate fuel. But diet was only half equation. Training was other half, and gladiator training was unlike anything modern world has seen, because they were not training to win. They were training to survive, to bleed impressively, to entertain, to live for the next fight. And that required very specific preparation.
Picture this: arena floor, midday sun, two gladiators circling, crowd roaring, sponsors watching, bets placed, fight begins. Sword strikes, blade cuts across torso, blood sprays, audience gasps, gladiator staggers, looks mortal, looks fatal. But he keeps fighting, because wound is shallow, painful, spectacular, but not lethal. Why? Fat. That subcutaneous layer, the tissue modern fitness culture despises, just saved his life. Blade penetrated skin, cut through fat, stopped before reaching muscle, before hitting organs, before causing death. This was not luck, this was design. Roman lanistae understood something modern world forgot. In edged weapon combat, fat is defensive layer, not weakness, not laziness, actual armor. Consider anatomy. Skin is thin, approximately 2 to 3 millimeters, offers no protection against blades. Beneath skin, subcutaneous fat. Thickness varies. Lean individual might have 5 to 10 millimeters. Obese individual could have 50 millimeters or more. Gladiators maintained approximately 20 to 30 millimeters of subcutaneous fat deliberately, strategically placed between skin and vital structures. When blade cuts, it must penetrate layers sequentially, skin first, then fat, then fascia, then muscle, then potentially organs. Each layer slows the blade, creates resistance. Fat, particularly effective because it is soft tissue, does not provide rigid stopping point, but does create drag, friction, energy dissipation. Think of stabbing butter versus stabbing meat. Butter gives way, blade slides through, but process is slower than air. Each centimeter of butter slows the blade incrementally. Fat works similarly. Blade enters easily, but progress through fat tissue requires continuous force. If initial strike lacks sufficient power, the blade stops in fat layer, never reaches critical structures. This was crucial for arena economics. Sponsors wanted blood, audiences demanded violence, but dead gladiators generated no future revenue. The solution: make them bleed without killing them. And fat layer accomplished exactly that. Slash across chest, spectacular blood spray, shallow wound, heals in weeks. Gladiator fights again next month. Thrust toward abdomen, blade penetrates fat, stops before peritoneum. Painful, dramatic, survivable. Cut along arm, fat layer over bicep prevents deep muscle damage. Blood flows impressively, arm still functional. Every wound looked worse than it was. This was perfect for entertainment. Audience saw violence, saw suffering, saw blood, got satisfaction. But Gladiator lived. Sponsor kept investment. Everyone won. Except the Gladiator, obviously, but his survival was better than alternative. Contrast with lean fighter, modern MMA fighter, for example. Very low body fat, maybe 8 to 10% in competition shape, almost no subcutaneous protection. If that fighter faced edged weapons, every cut reaches muscle immediately, every thrust penetrates deeply. Wounds are genuinely lethal, no buffer, no protection. This is why ancient warriors who actually fought wars, legionaries, auxiliaries, cavalry, wore armor, metal armor, leather armor, chainmail, because without armor, human body is extremely vulnerable to weapons. But gladiators could not wear full armor. Audience needed to see bodies, needed to see muscles, needed to see blood. Armor defeated the purpose. So they grew their own armor, biological armor, fat. Medical evidence supports this. Analysis of gladiator remains shows healed wounds, many healed wounds, cuts that scarred, injuries that mended. These men were cut repeatedly, but survived repeatedly. If wounds were regularly reaching vital structures, survival rate would be much lower. But gladiators often fought 10, 20, even 30 times, accumulated scars, accumulated injuries, but lived. Fat made this possible. There is also psychological dimension. Gladiator with substantial bulk looked more intimidating, looked powerful, looked like someone who could absorb punishment.
Audience expectations mattered. If Gladiator looked frail, audience doubted his capability. But thick, solid fighter? That looked like warrior, like someone worth watching. The fat served branding purpose, made gladiators visually distinct from normal citizens. Citizens aspired to lean, defined look, Greek aesthetic. Gladiators were deliberately opposite, bulky, thick, othered. This separation was important. Gladiators were not citizens, were not equals, were spectacle, were commodity. Different body composition reinforced different status. But fat had limitations. Too much fat impaired mobility, made fighters slow, clumsy, unable to dodge, unable to react quickly. So balance was required. Enough fat for protection, not so much that performance suffered.
This balance was achieved through controlled diet and intensive training. Gladiators were not obese, were not immobile, were not weak. They were strong men with strategic fat distribution, fat over torso, where cuts were most common, fat over major muscle groups, where slashes occurred, but not excessive fat, not debilitating fat, functional fat. Modern sumo wrestlers again provide comparison. They are enormously strong, extremely agile despite size, quick reflexes, explosive power, but also substantial fat layer. Sumo wrestling, like gladiatorial combat, values both power and protection. Bulk intimidates opponents, absorbs impacts, provides stability. Gladiators applied same principles, with edged weapons instead of pushing techniques, with survival instead of ring victory as primary goal. The fat was armor, intentional, calculated, effective. It turned potentially lethal spectacle into survivable entertainment, made brutal business models sustainable. And beneath that armor, beneath the protective layer, real muscle, enormous strength, built through training that would break modern athletes. Because fat alone meant nothing. Fat just kept them alive. Muscle made them dangerous.
The confusion is understandable. Fat gladiators seem weak, contradicts intuition. How could soft-looking men be elite fighters? Muscle was there, just hidden. Modern fitness culture equates visible muscle with strength. If you cannot see abs, you are not fit. If biceps do not show veins, you are not strong. If definition is absent, you are weak. This is nonsense. Strength and visibility are not synonymous, never were. The conflation is modern invention, product of bodybuilding culture, of physique competitions, of Instagram aesthetics. Real strength often hides beneath fat. Powerlifters prove this. Strongmen prove this. Olympic weightlifters in super heavyweight category prove this. These athletes lift inhuman weights, squat 800 pounds, deadlift 1,000 pounds, press pars overhead. They are strongest humans alive. And most do not have visible abs, do not have shredded physiques, carry substantial body fat, because fat does not prevent strength, sometimes enhances it. Gladiators understood this instinctively. They needed maximum strength, maximum power, maximum durability. Visible abs did not contribute to any of these goals. So they built muscle beneath fat layer, enormous muscle, dense muscle, functional muscle. Training methodology ensured this. Gladiator training was not bodybuilding, was not isolation exercises, was not pump chasing. It was brutal, full-body functional strength work. Daily routine started early, dawn training, empty stomach, 6 hours of continuous work before first meal. Wooden weapons were heavier than real weapons. Training gladius weighed twice what combat gladius weighed. Training shield was thicker, heavier, more unwieldy. Why? To build strength beyond what combat required. If you train with 20-pound sword, 10-pound sword feels light. If you train with 30-pound shield, 15-pound shield feels manageable. Roman military used same principle. Legionaries trained with weighted equipment, fought with lighter gear, made actual combat feel easier. Gladiators took this further. Their training weapons were absurdly heavy, deliberately, because strength margin meant survival margin. Exercises were compound movements, swinging weighted sword repeatedly, thousands of repetitions, holding shield in defensive position for extended periods, practicing lunges while holding heavy equipment, grappling with training partners while wearing weighted vest. Nothing isolated, nothing aesthetic, everything functional, everything brutal. The parlous, wooden training post was central. Gladiators struck it for hours, sword strikes, shield bashes, footwork drills.
The polis did not fight back, did not move, just absorbed punishment. This developed striking power, muscle memory, endurance. A gladiator who could strike polis for 6 hours could strike opponent for however long fight lasted. Modern heavy bag training is similar concept. Boxers hit bag for rounds, builds power, builds endurance, builds mental toughness. But boxers trained 30 minutes, maybe an hour. Gladiators trained 6 hours, every day, for years. This volume built muscle differently than modern training. Not maximum hypertrophy, not peak definition, but dense, functional, durable tissue. High repetition training with moderate weight builds endurance muscle, slow twitch fibers. These fibers do not grow as large as fast twitch fibers, but they are extraordinarily fatigue resistant. Gladiator muscle was endurance muscle, had to be. Fights lasted long time, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes longer. Swinging sword for 30 minutes requires muscular endurance far beyond what short sprints require. And the barley bean diet supported this. High carbohydrate fuels endurance activity, provides glycogen for sustained effort. Protein requirements for endurance athletes are lower than for strength athletes. So gladiators built muscle on plant-heavy diet. Not maximum possible muscle, but sufficient muscle, functional muscle, strong muscle. How strong? Historical accounts provide clues. Gladiators were described as capable of decapitating with single sword stroke. This requires enormous force, upper body strength, core stability, technical skill.
They could fight in heavy armor for extended periods. Some gladiator types wore 40, 50 pounds of equipment. Maintaining fighting capability under that load requires serious strength. They grappled with opponents, threw them, held them down, body weight control, core strength, grip strength, all indicators of overall muscular development. But none of this was visible. The 20 to 30 millimeters of subcutaneous fat obscured everything. No muscle definition, no vascularity, no separation. To modern eye, they looked soft, looked weak, looked unhealthy even. To Roman eye, they looked like working animals, like oxen, like draft horses, strong but not beautiful, functional but not aesthetic. And this was acceptable because gladiators were not beauty contestants, were not status symbols, were fighting slaves. Their appearance mattered only insofar as it affected combat effectiveness. The fat-covered muscle served another purpose, temperature regulation. Fat insulates. In hot Mediterranean climate, this seems counterproductive, but during fights, insulation helped maintain core temperature, prevented rapid heat loss during breaks, kept muscles warm and responsive. There is also injury protection beyond cut protection. Fat cushions impact. When Gladiator was thrown to ground, fat absorbed some force. When struck by shield, fat distributed impact, reduced bruising, reduced skeletal trauma. Modern football players, rugby players understand this. Linemen maintain higher body fat than running backs because their position involves constant collision. Fat helps survival. Gladiators faced constant collision, not just from weapons, from bodies, from falls, from arena obstacles. Fat helped them survive all of it. So yes, they were strong, phenomenally strong, stronger than average Roman citizen by enormous margin, probably stronger than most modern men, but you could not see it. The strength was real, the muscle was real, just invisible beneath protective layer. This invisibility frustrated modern scholars initially, seemed contradictory. How could elite fighters look soft? But contradiction dissolves when you understand purpose. These men were not performing, were not posing, were surviving, and survival required hidden strength beneath visible protection. The muscle was there, working, functioning, keeping them alive,
just not on display.
Gladiator training had one purpose: keep them alive long enough to be profitable. Not to win gloriously, not to dominate opponents, not to achieve martial perfection, to survive, to bleed impressively, to entertain crowds, to fight again. This fundamentally changed training methodology. Modern combat sports train for victory. Boxers train to knock out opponents. MMA fighters train to submit or finish. Victory is goal. Dominance is ideal. Gladiators trained for duration, for spectacle, for controlled violence that satisfied audiences without killing participants. Because dead gladiator was financial disaster. Years of training wasted. Investment in food, housing, medical care lost. Future revenue potential gone. Lanistae could not afford high mortality rates, so training emphasized defense, survival, damage mitigation, how to take cut without dying, how to fall without breaking bones, how to make injury look worse than it was. This was theater training as much as combat training. Gladiators learned stagecraft, how to react to wounds dramatically, how to play to crowd, how to generate sympathy or hatred as needed. The doctores, trainers, were former gladiators, survivors, men who understood arena reality. They taught students not how to kill efficiently, but how to fight entertainingly. Specific techniques for specific gladiator types. Murmillo trained differently than Retiarius, Thrax differently than Secutor. Each type had role, each type had style, each type had survival strategies specific to their equipment and opponent matching. Hours spent drilling specific movements, not exploring variations, not developing personal style. Repetition, the same strike, same parry, same footwork, thousands of times. Why? Because in the arena, under pressure, under crowd noise, facing armed opponent, you revert to training. If training is varied, you hesitate. If training is specific, you react automatically. Automatic reactions save lives. Hesitation kills.
Sparring was controlled, not full contact, not full intensity, because injuries in training meant lost revenue. A gladiator injured in practice could not fight scheduled bout, could not generate income. So sparring emphasized technique over power, timing over force, positioning over aggression. This frustrated some gladiators, especially those with warrior backgrounds, captured soldiers, defeated enemies, men accustomed to real combat. But arena was not war. Different rules, different objectives, different survival strategies. In war, you kill enemy quickly, efficiently, move to next target. Speed is survival. In arena, you extend fight, make it interesting, give crowd their money's worth. Quick kill disappoints audience, disappoints sponsors, reduces future bookings. So gladiators learned to fight slowly, to wound without killing, to create drama without finality. This required immense skill, more skill, arguably, than killing quickly, because balancing entertainment with survival while managing opponent is a complex problem. Successful gladiators mastered this balance, became crowd favorites, earned privileges, survived years, some even won freedom. Unsuccessful gladiators died, not usually in arena. Death rates were lower than Hollywood suggests, but from accumulated damage, from infections, from injuries that never properly healed. The training prepared them for survival, but could not guarantee it. Variables were too numerous: opponent skill, crowd mood, sponsor preferences, equipment failures, bad luck. But training maximized odds, and in gladiator world, that was everything. Because they were not soldiers dying for Rome, were not criminals being executed. They were investments being managed, assets being protected while simultaneously being risked.
The training reflected this contradiction, make them tough enough to survive, skilled enough to entertain, valuable enough to preserve, but expendable enough to risk. This was the gladiator paradox, and training navigated it daily.
Gladiators were slaves, property, owned, bought, sold. This is undeniable. But they were extremely valuable property, like racehorses, like prize bulls, like any high-performance asset. A trained gladiator cost fortunes. Conservative estimates 50,000 sesterces, equivalent to a decade of skilled laborers' wages. Some gladiators sold for 10 times that amount. This changed everything. Normal slave could be worked to death, replaced cheaply, cost perhaps 2,000 sesterces. If they died, minor loss, buy another. Gladiator death, catastrophic financial loss, unacceptable, unthinkable. Everything possible was done to prevent it. Lanistae, gladiator owners, ran businesses, not charities. Their success depended on keeping investments alive and profitable. This meant comprehensive support infrastructure. Medical care was extensive. Gladiators had access to best doctors in Rome. Galen, most famous physician in Roman Empire, served as gladiator doctor early in career. He learned surgery treating their wounds, learned anatomy studying their bodies. Why hire expensive physician for slaves? Because 50,000 sesterce investment demands protection. Infection could kill a gladiator. Improperly healed fracture could end career. Chronic pain could reduce performance. So, top medical care, clean facilities, proper wound treatment, pain management, whatever necessary to maintain asset value. Diet was controlled scientifically, not for health. Romans cared nothing for slave health, but for performance. The barley, bean, ash regimen was calculated to produce specific body composition at minimum cost while maximizing durability. Nutritionists did not exist, but Lanistae experimented, observed results, refined feeding programs over generations, created a system that worked. Training facilities were substantial investments. Ludus Magnus in Rome could house and train hundreds of gladiators, included barracks, training yards, medical facilities, armories, cost millions of sesterces to construct and maintain. Why such expense? Because professional gladiator production required professional infrastructure.
Housing was basic but adequate, not luxury, but not dungeon either. Gladiators needed rest, needed recovery, needed to maintain condition between fights. Some earned privileges, private cells, better food, sexual access to female slaves. These rewards incentivized performance, gave gladiators reason to cooperate with system. Most profitable gladiators lived relatively comfortable lives. Compared to field slaves, mine slaves, galley slaves, gladiator existence was preferable. Higher status, better treatment, possibility of fame. Some gladiators were volunteers, free men who signed contracts to fight. Attracted by money, fame, or desperation, they chose enslavement temporarily for chance at fortune. This seems insane, choosing slavery, choosing mortal danger. But Roman economy offered few paths to wealth for low-status individuals. Gladiator career, despite risks, offered possibility that normal labor did not. The economics worked because of spectacle. Romans paid enormous sums for entertainment. Amphitheater games generated massive revenue. Successful Lanistae became wealthy, some became senators. This created incentive structure. Invest heavily in gladiators, protect investment, generate return, reinvest profits, expand operation. Modern sports teams operate similarly. Professional athletes are assets. Teams invest millions in their development, protection, medical care.
not from compassion, from economic necessity. Gladiators were ancient version, combat athletes, managed assets, investments that walked, bled, and hopefully survived long enough to justify their cost. They were slaves, but they were expensive slaves, and that made all the difference. Because expendable slaves are treated as expendable, valuable slaves are treated as valuable. The fat layer, the specialized diet, the medical care, all evidence of value. Gladiators were property, but they were profitable property, and profit protected them better than any law could.
So what did Gladiator actually look like? Standing in arena, midday sun, crowd roaring, moment before combat. Not Russell Crowe, not chiseled perfection, not marble statue come to life. Reality was stranger, harsher, more functional. Skin was bronze, darkened by constant sun exposure. Training happened outdoors, fighting happened outdoors. Mediterranean sun marked them. Scars covered visible skin, white lines, puckered tissue, evidence of previous fights, previous survival. Each scar told a story. Each mark was lesson learned. Body was thick, solid, powerful looking but not defined, chest broad but soft-edged, arms muscular but covered, abdomen strong but hidden beneath a fat layer. No six-pack, no V-taper, no aesthetic appeal by modern standards. Legs were heavily muscled, thick thighs, strong calves. These men moved constantly, lunged, pivoted, maintained balance under load. Legs showed it. Hands were calloused, rough, weapon grip marks permanent, years of holding wooden training swords, real combat swords, shields, left permanent impressions. Face often bore damage, broken nose, scarred eyebrow, missing teeth. Close combat marked faces inevitably. Helmets protected skull, did not protect everything. Posture was distinct, combat ready, even at rest. Weight forward, knees slightly bent, arms loose but ready. Constant vigilance bred constant readiness. They did not look beautiful, did not look heroic by modern standards, looked like what they were: working men, brutalized men, surviving men. When fight began, transformation occurred. Movement revealed capability, speed surprising for bulk, power obvious in strikes, technique evident in positioning. Blood came quickly. Surface wounds, fat layer ensuring spectacular bleeding without deep damage, red streaming down bronze skin, crowd loving it. Exhaustion showed differently than in lean fighters. No visible muscle fatigue, no definition disappearing under pump, just gradual slowing, heavier breathing, reduced reaction speed. But they lasted, fought for 30 minutes, 40, however long entertainment required. The carbohydrate-loaded, fat-protected, endurance-trained body delivered what sponsors demanded: survival. After fight, if they survived, Gladiator was bloody mess, covered in cuts, bruised, exhausted, but alive. Fat had worked, training had worked, system had worked. Medical staff rushed arena floor, cleaned wounds, applied treatments, assessed damage, calculated recovery time, scheduled next fight. Because this gladiator was investment that just generated return, now needed maintenance before next use. This was reality, not glorious, not beautiful, not inspirational by modern standards, but effective, brutally effective. These fat, scarred, barley-fed slaves created entertainment industry that lasted centuries, generated fortunes, filled massive amphitheaters, became a cultural phenomenon that echoes through history. They did it not with aesthetic perfection, not with visible muscles, not with movie star looks. They did it with functional bodies, strategically modified, deliberately fattened, carefully trained, continuously maintained. Their appearance served purpose, every aspect calculated.
Fat protected, muscle powered, scars proved survival, bronze skin showed experience. They were not statues, were not ideals, were not fantasy warriors. They were real. Blood and fat and survival instinct wrapped in human form, shaped by economic incentives, modified by brutal training, sustained by calculated nutrition. Hollywood will never show this. Audiences would reject it. Not heroic enough, not inspiring enough, not aesthetically pleasing enough. But it was truth. The real gladiators. Not beautiful, not perfect, just surviving. One fight at a time, one scar at a time, one more day alive. And that survival, that refusal to die for entertainment, was more impressive than any six-pack could ever be.